Welcome to Chai Pe Kharcha, where we have conversations on personal finance among four NRI professionals working at tech firms. Think of these like water cooler chats you have at the office. Only this time, you will have Ishan, Madhvesh, Rohit, and Siddharth as colleagues you will be listening into. Before we get started, a quick disclaimer. We are not financial experts. The content provided in this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. Always consult with a qualified financial professional if you need financial advice.
Right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another freshly brewed episode of Chai Pe Kharcha. Today, we are talking about a very interesting topic especially for NRIs. I think, how much money should you keep in India versus whatever foreign country that you're living in right now? On the episode today, we have Siddharth and Ishan, and as usual, we'll share our personal perspectives on this question, and we'll probably not get to a decision, but we'll at least share what how we are thinking about this particular question. So let me start with you, Sid. The topic today is how much money should we keep in India versus foreign. But let me first ask you, how much money are you keeping in India versus foreign right now?
ठीक तो आई एम कीपिंग 35%. अगर मैं ब्रेक डाउन करूँ तो
Okay.
35% इंडिया में होगा, बाकी बाहर है. बट इट इज़ इंक्रीजिंग. सो
Hmm.
बाहर से इंडिया ट्रांसफ़र हो रहा है, तो इट्स ऑन द वे अप.
Okay. And then how do you, why are you changing that number? Like, what is your decision making और थॉट प्रोसेस अराउंड यार मेरे को 60% बाहर रखना है 40% इंडिया में रखना है एंड देन ओवर टाइम यू आर थिंकिंग 60-40 की जगह में भी आई वांट टू डू 50-50 हाउ डू यू थिंक अबाउट इट
या बाहर रखने के एडवांटेजेस तो हैं, जो पिछले सेशंस में आदित्य के साथ भी डिस्कस हुए थे. तीन मेन एडवांटेज वही हैं कि करेंसी डिप्रिसिएशन से आप थोड़ा बच जाते हो, आईएनआर डिप्रिसिएशन से. दूसरा है, स्पेशली इन सिंगापुर, द एडवांटेज इज नो कैपिटल गेन्स टैक्स. तो एक वो फ़ायदा होता है टैक्स के इसमें. और थर्ड, ग्लोबल एक्सपोजर. यू आर एक्सपोज टू डिफरेंट मार्केट्स एंड at different points in time. With the geopolitical changes, few markets could outperform the Indian market also. These are three main advantages बाहर रखने के. इंडिया में मेरा बढ़ रहा है पोर्टफोलियो because of my long mutual fund
बहुत पैसा कमा रहे हो
investments.
मुझे लग रहा
So it's not.
है बहुत पैसा कमा रहे हो इंडिया में
बहुत
लग
पैसा क्या जी सर?
रहा
सभी कमा रहे हैं. मैं अकेला नहीं कमा रहा. पर इंडिया में वही लॉन्ग टर्म
है
अपने जो इन्वेस्टमेंट सेट है, एसआईपी, वो चल रहा है. वो पैसा कहीं से तो जाएगा, तो यहीं से जा रहा है. देयर इज नो एनी ओवर साइंटिफिक लॉजिक उसमें कि
ओके
इंडिया में रखने के हिसाब से डाल रहा हूँ. इंडिया में एडवाइज़र है, इंडिया में म्यूचुअल फंड का एसआईपी सेट है, तो वहीं जा रहा है. So I don't have a good intelligent answer, but that's
गॉट
what's
इट
happening
गॉट इट सो इट्स
organically
लेस ऑफ अ
in my case.
design and more of just happening on its own. Market fluctuations are making it so that
Correct,
your allocation to India is increasing.
correct, correct. But though in after the last few conversations, I am wanting to initiate it in that perspective कि maybe सिंगापुर या कहीं और एक एसआईपी फॉरेन करेंसी में भी
Right.
डाल देना चाहिए for the long term. But हाँ, yeah, I haven't
Got
taken
it.
any
Okay.
action on it yet.
ईशान, let me come to you now. Same set of questions. आप अभी कितना पैसा इंडिया में रखे हुए हो वर्सेस कितना आपने यहाँ रखा हुआ है एंड हाउ डू यू डिसाइड कितना रखना चाहिए एंड डू यू हैव एन आइडियल एलोकेशन एंड वेयर आर यू हाउ क्लोज यू आर टू योर आइडियल एलोकेशन
So I haven't yet thought of what an ideal allocation would be, but जो मेरा चल रहा
Right.
है अभी, that is I only have about 10% of my funds in India. It's basically since I have family back in India, I want to keep some money here. कभी you want to send money back, कुछ खर्चा हो जाता है. You don't want to
Right.
wait for a bag of transport to go through, which I mean, these days it's still relatively real time. But earlier it used to take about 3 days to go through. So you want to have some
Hmm.
funds. Plus, also, whenever I travel back to India, I don't want to keep changing currency. So I have my accounts in India where I can withdraw money from. So just
That's
for
a good
those two
one.
things is what I keep money for. In India right now, I'm obviously not actively investing in India. मेरा कोई सिप नहीं चल रहा. Sit, not everyone makes money in India. So,
Hmm.
I mean, my entire reason for keeping money in India is to make sure that there are funds here for anything that my family needs or for my own personal expenses whenever I'm traveling to India. Apart from that, whatever money I'm earning is basically kept for expenses and for investments in the market that I'm in.
Got it. So it would be fair to say that your decision of keeping money in India is not tied to an investment decision. It's more कि यार इंडिया में कुछ तो कंजम्पशन चल ही रहा है मेरा, सो
Yeah,
लेट मी जस्ट पुट सम मनी देयर, बट ऑल ऑफ माय इन्वेस्टमेंट इज ड्रिवन थ्रू सिंगापुर.
correct.
Okay, got it. And if I were to share about my own, like historically, I have maintained about a 50-50 allocation. Interestingly, just because of the company stock that we get, I have some allocation in US. I have obviously my earnings and my salary and everything comes to me in Singapore. And then I have a sizable portfolio in India through mutual funds and other investments that I've made. After the last couple of conversation, I think very similar to you said, I have started to rethink how I want to do this. Like I want to have India exposure, but I don't think I need to keep so much currency in like Indian currency so that I can invest in something like an India Nifty 50 index fund denominated in dollars that allows me to capture the equity gains of India at the same time any dollar gains that happens due to currency depreciation. So again, I have not taken any action on this, but I'm very seriously starting to think about it and probably going to take some decisions pretty soon.
अरे, रोहित, पर क्वेश्चन ये है ना कि
Mm.
एंड ये दोनों से है, रोहित और ईशान दोनों से सवाल है कि सवाल ये हम सबने पूछना
कितना
चाहिए
होना
कि
चाहिए?
कितना होना चाहिए, 50-50 होना चाहिए, 40-60, और ये कैसे डिसाइड करेंगे. आई डोंट हैव अ
Okay.
गुड
Yeah.
आंसर. आई डोंट थिंक एनीवन हैज अ गुड आंसर. पर आप लोगों के कुछ विचार हैं
I
इस
can
विषय
share, and अभी जो ईशान बता रहे थे, I think that was very interesting because a big reason why I initially started keeping money in India was कि वहाँ पे पूरी फैमिली है मेरी, राइट, एंड उनके एक्सपेंसेस वगैरह हैं. वंस इन अ वाइल कोई मेडिकल एक्सपेंस हो जाता है, लाइक समटाइम्स आई व्हेनेवर आई ट्रैवल टू इंडिया आई आल्सो वांट एक्सेस टू फंड्स एंड आई डोंट वांट टू कीप यूजिंग माय फॉरेन क्रेडिट कार्ड क्योंकि उसमें फीस वीस लगेगी. तो that was the initial reason. And the second thing was वो home country bias जो होता है. So because I spent most of my life in India, so वहाँ के market से I am more familiar. So I want to keep my money invested in places that I understand better. So for those reasons, I ended up parking a bunch of money in India without thinking so much about the depreciation and all that stuff, because the ultimate vision was कि यार कभी तो वापस जाना ही है, तो might as well put it in India. But now that after a few years there is a decent amount of, let's say, corpus that has been built both in India and outside of India, I feel like I am at a different stage where I want to think about this question more. क्योंकि पहले थोड़ा सा मजबूरी में ड्रिवन था वो कि यार वहाँ पे ज़रूरत है तो वो करना ही है. अभी क्या है कि ज़रूरतें पूरी हो चुकी है. नाउ आई कैन थिंक मोर academically about this question कि what should be the right allocation, and have some kind of a decision making framework which allows me to get to an answer that is right for me. And obviously, as with all things in personal finance, what is right for me may not be right for anyone else. So everyone needs to do that exercise on their own. अब आपका जो क्वेश्चन है कि कितना होना चाहिए और क्या पॉइंटर्स आपको कंसिडर करने चाहिए, at a very initial top of mind perspective will be ki, first of all, I would want to cover my needs, right? So I have a dependent family in India. So I will say कि normally आप बोलते हो कि यार 6 months emergency fund बना लो वगैरह वगैरह, but I am too scared to be comfortable with just 6 months. सो व्हाट आई विल वांट टू डू इज़ कि कम से कम मैं 3 साल का लिक्विड कैश रखूँगा, सो दैट वेदर आई एम एबल टू सेंड मनी और नॉट सेंड मनी, my family can continue their lifestyle for minimum 3 years. So that will be like literally level one of how much money I put in India within easy reach and access of my dad and mom, right? उसके बाद I will say कि okay, there are probably certain unique opportunities for investment in India. For example, अपना sovereign gold bond हो गया, या कोई और तरह का scheme हो गया which is like government scheme which doesn't exist anywhere outside of India, and I want to tap into those schemes because net that is giving me better benefit. So then I will allocate a percentage of my money for those investment schemes and investment vehicles. उसके बाद एक ग्लोबल पोर्टफोलियो वाला क्वेश्चन आता है कि यार आउटसाइड ऑफ इंडिया देयर इज ऑल दिस, यूएस में चल रहा है कुछ, मे बी यू वांट सम एक्सपोजर टू अ चाइना, मे बी यू वांट एक्सपोजर टू यूरोप और व्हाटएवर, वो चीज़ें इंडिया के थ्रू करना इज प्रोबेबली लेस एफिशिएंट बिकॉज वी आर इन अ प्रिविलेज्ड पोजीशन. तो इंडिया के अंदर हम टैक्स क्यों दें, और इंडिया के अंदर हम उसका जो कॉस्ट है, कॉस्ट ऑफ मेकिंग दैट इन्वेस्टमेंट इन टर्म्स ऑफ फीस एंड एवरीथिंग, if we have access to lower cost, lower tax vehicles to do the same investment outside of India, then maybe we should choose that. And then ultimately, if we go back to India at some point, then obviously we are bringing all that money back anyway. So that's how I think about it right now. But I think there's probably more that I need to unlock in terms of how to think about this whole thing. What are your thoughts?
I think Rohit brought up a very interesting point on bias. So there is definitely a home currency bias. There is definitely a home bias in terms of how much money to keep there. उसके अंदर the most important question to answer, I think, which again Rohit brought up, was why are we keeping the money? Right. So there can be multiple reasons for keeping money. One is you keep some emergency funds for family, you're keeping some funds for your own expenses. And then you might have some funds kept there for investments if you want to invest in India. And abhi India investments seem very attractive because everyone believes that India is on a growth path and markets बढ़ेंगी. अगले कुछ सालों में you can make a lot of money in India. But I mean, this is an ongoing process. You need to constantly keep questioning, saying, am I biased because मैं इंडिया से हूँ इसलिए मैं वहाँ पैसे इन्वेस्ट कर रहा हूँ, or am I, would my friends in another country who are not from India want to invest in India? Or would they want to keep money in India? Because that currency depreciation is a real thing. We've discussed this before also. The value of currency when we came to, say, Singapore 10 years ago, your investments needed to more than double to keep your money at par. तो जितना पैसा INR में रखा था, rupees में रखा था, that should have more than doubled in the last 10 years for it to remain at the same value as what the dollar would give you today if you had kept that money in dollars. So your investments
Right.
need to give you that level of return also. Otherwise, it should only be for things that you need in an emergency, which again, you can divide your own quotas ki har cheez ke liye, किस चीज के लिए पैसा चाहिए. I mean, why do you need to keep it there?
Fair enough. I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with both of it. I think one more add-on that I'll put in is the retirement piece. If you intend to go back to India at some point in time and retire there, you wouldn't want to think about converting all your money at that one point in time to INR. Or at least that's how I am thinking about it. कि अगर वहाँ पे ऑलरेडी है पैसा, You can, at that time, you can plan for retirement better in terms of अगर घर घर खरीदना है, फार्म खरीदना है, जो भी इन्वेस्टमेंट करने हैं, you can do it and then slowly phase into retirement rather than एक बार में सारा पैसा कन्वर्ट करके आज मैं रिटायर हो रहा हूँ, घर भी खरीद लेता हूँ, फार्म भी खरीद लेता हूँ, then you will be slave to the conversion rate at that point in time. So that's also something we could think about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we are all in agreement of कितना होना चाहिए वो तो नहीं पता, पर क्या फैक्टर्स होनी चाहिए
Yeah.
वो
That's actually a
ये
really
है.
good point in terms of sort of averaging out your conversion over time rather than saying at one point of time I'll just overnight convert everything that I have and move to India. Because what if I want to maintain my equity positions? What if I want to maintain like other positions that I've taken? And converting to Indian rupee basically means selling all those investments, getting the dollar value, and then exchanging that dollar value into rupees. और फिर उसके बाद वापस री इन्वेस्ट करने के लिए वी विल सी कि अच्छा अगर म्यूचुअल फंड में डालो या इक्विटी में डालो. सो that's something that I think needs a deeper thought in terms of how we should do it. Another point that is interesting you mentioned briefly is around property. I think if you are a fan of property investment or if you just want to buy some property for yourself for future, does it make sense to slowly build some amount of money in India and then buy the property as early as you reasonably can with the assumption कि यार बाकी चीज़ों की तरह property prices भी शायद बढ़ेंगे ही in the future. So if I can buy a piece of, like if I can buy a plot or if I can buy a flat, जो भी आपको लेना है, why not do it early enough and just lock that in versus saying कि हम आज से अगर 10 साल बाद रिटायर होके हम इंडिया जाने का सोचेंगे मे बी, उस पॉइंट पे जाके प्रॉपर्टी लेंगे तो मोस्ट लाइकली 10 साल बाद का प्रॉपर्टी प्राइस विल बी मच मोर देन व्हाट इट इज टुडे, even after adjusting for inflation. What do you think about that?
सर उसमें एक मेरा यही विचार है कि पहले
Hmm.
तो प्लेस आई एम अज्यूमिंग इन दिस वी आर डिस्कसिंग कि प्रॉपर्टी
Yeah,
फॉर यू टू गो एंड सेटल डाउन
yeah,
योरसेल्फ
mainly to
रादर देन
self
प्रॉपर्टी एज अ
consumption.
इन्वेस्टमेंट. तो उसमें फिर एक सवाल आ जाता है कि
Hmm.
कौन से जगह में. मोस्टली डिफ़ॉल्ट में लोग सोचते हैं होम टाउन में रहेंगे, बट होम टाउन की भी सर्कमस्टांसेस
Yep.
चेंज, सोशियो इकोनॉमिक ग्राफ्स चेंज, महंगाई
Hmm.
एक शहर की वजह से दूसरे शहर चेंज हो जाती
Yeah.
है एंड पर्सपेक्टिव ऑल्सो चेंजेस. आजकल मेरे को बड़ा लगता है
Hmm.
कि भाई फार्म होना चाहिए, ये सब
Hmm.
कंट्री साइड टाइप फील होनी चाहिए. मे बी 10 साल बाद लगे नहीं शहर में रहना चाहिए या
True.
मेडिकल फैसिलिटीज पास हों, ये सब. तो इट्स द पॉइंट आई एम ट्राइंग टू मेक इज कि if you buy the house now with the
Hmm.
intent of staying there after 10 years, you are predetermining your choice well in advance, which
True.
which might work out, might
So
not work
my
out.
wife has an interesting perspective on this because we have discussed this a couple of times. Her thought is, let's say we don't know where we want to settle, but we have our hometown in India. Why don't we buy a property there, put it on rent, and then whenever we do decide to get back to India, if we want to stay at that place, great, we have a property available. If we want to stay at some other place, we know that we have a property that can be liquidated to then reinvest in another property at that point of time. तो बेसिकली व्हाट दैट डज इज, जो अपना डायलेमा है कि अच्छा 10 साल बाद हम इंडिया जाएंगे एंड तब हम कुछ खरीदेंगे, इट ऑलमोस्ट सॉर्ट ऑफ लॉक्स द मनी इन फॉर दैट वन थिंग and it gives you a bit of a hedge against the rising price of real estate. So if you can stay at that place, that's great. If you want to move out of that place, then you at least have some money locked up that you can use, which has captured the value of property appreciation.
उसमें सर एक assumption है ना, underlying assumption एक ये है कि prices of properties will always go up. And the second assumption is rental yield will be always a alternate to, let's say, investment in mutual funds or stock market. I'm saying this with the perspective that you'll have to do maintenance of the house, property tax, ये वो सब लगेगा. So the rental output won't be, in my opinion, isn't very comparable to mutual funds, yeah, some of the other
Fair enough.
instruments. It could work out, of course. There's a lot of assumptions. If those assumptions fall true, then
Hmm.
makes sense. Like all investments. पीछे देख के बोलेंगे कि
क्यों कर दिया?
भाई क्यों कर दिया.
Ishan, what do you think about this property wala angle?
See, for me, property is it's not an easy decision to make. Obviously, like Siddharth said, you need to know where you want to settle down. That is, I think, the most important question. But even the perspective you brought in from what you and your wife have discussed, I think that conversation around property needs to be treated more like an investment, less like I am parking my money here for future purposes. I'm effectively parking it as an investment. Tomorrow, that investment can pay me back if I live in that house, or that investment can pay me back if I sell that house and move somewhere else. So, this is what Siddharth was saying. The underlying assumption there is that this investment is going to go up. That's the
Yeah.
reason we're putting the money in. So, it's not just parking your money there. You're basically doing an investment in this case. So, I mean, if I was bucketing like I was doing earlier, ये पैसा खर्चे के लिए, ये पैसा parents के लिए,
Hmm.
the housing decision is more ये पैसा investments के लिए अभी, because I'm not going and living there. And that
Yeah.
investment, like again, Siddharth was saying, will have some servicing cost.
Yep.
So is it worth it for me? Especially because I have to then maintain a second house wherever I'm living also.
True. इसीलिए तो लिया नहीं अभी तक
Huh.
बात ही कर रहे हैं.
It's not an easy decision. And although what she says is smart, given that property prices in our lifetime have been going up,
Yeah.
the assumption is it will keep going up. I mean, in general, inflation will eat into property prices, so it will keep going up somehow. So it always feels like it's an expensive decision to make, but then 5-10 years later, you feel like तब ले लिया होता तो ये अच्छा था, अब तो और unaffordable हो गया.
Correct.
So
That's the big thing.
yeah, it's not an easy decision. I have struggled with it myself, and I haven't bought property either. So I keep struggling with it because every time I feel like अभी तो बहुत महंगा है यार, अभी बहुत महंगा है, and then it becomes even more expensive.
Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen, for engaging in this very interesting conversation today. I think, as with all questions we deal with, not an easy answer. But if we have the right decision making framework, then hopefully we get to some answer that works for us, and then baki kismat ke upar hai. So thanks everyone else for tuning in and listening to our chat on how much money you want to keep in India versus in a foreign country. Hope you learned something. Let us know what you thought of this episode, and we'll see you and we'll talk to you again soon in another episode of Chai Pe Kharcha.